My name is Stephanie Porter, and I'm the Outreach Agronomist at the Illinois Soybean Association. I will be your moderator for this session, and the session is called University of Illinois Soybean Variety Testing 2024 Results and Background. Today, Clay Harper, the manager of the Variety Testing Program at the University of Illinois, will provide background information and 2024 results from each soybean variety testing location. We'll save time for questions at the end, so feel free to take notes along the way, and please join me in welcoming Clay.
Good afternoon. 2024 happened to be the 50th year for variety testing program for soybeans. We had 134 varieties of soybeans from 17 different companies that were entered this year. We have 8 locations that are split up into 4 regions. Region 1 consists of our Freeport and DeKalb locations in northern Illinois. Region 2 is our Monmouth and Goodfield locations in, well, we'll say north central Illinois. Region 3 is Perry at the Ore Center in western Illinois, and then a site here at the University Research Farm at Urbana. And then Region 4 is in Belleville and St. Peter. We're going to just start with Region 1. This is we'll say background weather information and stuff on the 2 different sites there. The Freeport location is at Highland Community College. It was planted on May the 16th and harvested on October the 9th. Decent rainfall. Every one of the soybean locations, regardless of the trait package that's in there for the varieties, the location is treated as if it were a non-GMO trait package because there are non-GMO traits in each location. So we can't, the way that we lay out the trials, we just blanket spray herbicide across the whole thing. So weed management is a little bit of an issue sometimes. Starting with Freeport for our early maturity, we split the maturity ranges at each location in half, so early and late maturity. The early for Region 1 was a 1.9 to a 2.8. Now I want to note on the fills that you'll see, the fill variety is a 3.2. We use the same fill variety at every single location. So you can kind of use that as a commercial check. It is a very widely available commercial variety, but it was not necessarily officially entered in the variety trial, but it was just some stuff that we had on the farm just to be able to fill in around the trials and fill in where we had holes due to designing the trials. The public varieties were put in here some from the University of Illinois as well as from the Iowa State University. The public varieties that you'll see happen to be in the late maturity range from Illinois, which would be Dwight, Jack, and Williams 82. And again, those are also replicated at every location across the state, regardless of whether or not they would technically be geographically sound to be placed there. Down here at the bottom of the screen on each one tells what the trait package would be, because the 4th column there, that gives the abbreviation for what the trait package was for that variety, and that's just going off of what was given to us by the seed company. I'm not necessarily gonna, unless you have specific questions, I can't read off what every one of them was, but, or what the yields were, but yields on average were pretty good, especially in northern Illinois. I was pretty happy with the yields overall this year. Planting date seemed to have a very big effect on the yields. The Perry location was our first planted, and the Belleville location was the very last planted, and there was a 6-week gap between the two. And you'll notice when we get to them that the yields reflect it. Going to DeKalb, there was phenomenal yields there, I felt. Weed pressures were very low, especially when you consider that we were dealing with a non-GMO herbicide plan. There was next to no weeds at that location. I was surprised, and I made probably three location visits to each of the locations just to try to stay on top of weeds, and I never really had to deal with anything at DeKalb. There's the late maturities for DeKalb. Again, you'll see the fill in there. The public varieties of William 82, very old variety, but you could see that it did exceptionally well at DeKalb this year, averaging 70 bushels the acre, which was phenomenal. Region 2, again, this was at Monmouth and Goodfield. Goodfield was probably the best location in terms of yields this year. I was impressed. It was a great location. The rainfall at Goodfield wasn't quite as high as everywhere else, but the timeliness of the rains just seemed to give us some very good yields. So there's the Monmouth location yields, very good, with an average of 70 across the whole thing. There's the late maturities with a range of 3.3 to 4.2, with the commercial fill check of 74. Yeah. But the interesting thing there, Williams 82 at Monmouth only did 40. So Williams 82 is still a very good variety. We just have to put it in the right spot. Now, like I said, Goodfield was the best. Now, I had some individual plot yields at Goodfield that went about 110. But when you average it across 3 replications of each variety, that's where we came out with 90 for the high, but 63 for a low for Jack. And that one, I'm surprised it did that good, because I'm not sure that I even got all of it through the combine. Because that one, everywhere that I was at, every time I would come to Jack in the field, you could tell it, because it was pretty well laying flat on the ground, and I'd have to stop the combine and help it feed through, because it just bunch up on me. Not to say that it's a bad genetics or anything, it's just an older one. There's the late maturity beans from Goodfield. Region 3, Perry, like I said, it was the first one planted. but then it got planted again because part of it, this one, I guess you could say seed treatment really played a factor there. If it didn't have a seed treatment on it, it didn't emerge very well. So a lot of those ended up getting replanted because we got a cold snap shortly after it was planted, and we just had terrible emergence issues there. Urbana, we had just a normal year here, really. Yields at Perry were pretty good overall, but like I said, I think they could have been even higher if we hadn't had to replant some of them. The public varieties, you could see they did not have a seed treatment on them, and I think they would have done better had they had the seed treatment because there would have been a stronger stand. Region 4, Region 4, I would like to highlight that we are actually looking to find some new cooperators in the St. Peter area. We were lucky enough to get Dennis Brown with Brown Seed to help us this last year on short notice, but he does not have space enough for us for this upcoming year, and we'd like to find a cooperator that we can work with long-term. So if anybody out here has somebody that might be willing to work with us in that general geographic area, I would enjoy speaking with you. We were also very lucky to get the Bicycle Farms in Belleville to work with us on short notice this year. They've been great, and we plan to be working with them for a while. That location turned out to be a no-till location because they're no-till farmers, and like I said, we came in kind of a last minute working with them. So that kind of affected our yields a little bit, and we had strong weed pressure there too. And like I said, we're dealing with non-GMO weed program. So we were down there about 4 times walking those beans, and we did pretty decent, but the yields were affected. 63 for our high yield for the early maturity, which is decent maturities for around here, really. But you can see, and this was planted early June, just because of the weather down there. These were the first beans that Bicycles had planted on their farm, and we planted the corn and the bean trials at the same time down there, and they were happy that we were able to get in, and so were we. There's the late maturities. St. Peter, this was their brown seeds in it's actually near Neoga, but St. Peter. Planted a little more timely, very good yields. Weed pressures were very manageable. Very happy with the yields this year overall, really. I'd like to thank the cooperators that we've had. The Illinois Soybean Association, they've sponsored some special equipment on our combine to provide the protein and oil data that you'll see on all of our publications. That's to be able to provide some of the marketing exploits for Illinois to be able to hopefully add value to our soybeans. One thing that I would like to point out on the protein and oil, they're inversely proportioned. If you raise your protein levels, you're going to lower the oil levels and vice versa. So you're only going to get one or the other if you're trying to breed for, if the breeders are breeding for higher protein, they're going to get lower oil. So, and then I have to thank Darren Jose for helping me get through my first year, and I couldn't have done it without him. So I would like to entertain any questions from anybody that has them.
How do you determine what varieties companies beans you're gonna put in your plot? Like, I don't see any like Pioneers or Astros.
The and have them enter in our program. Our entries have been going down steadily over the last few years, and we would like to keep the program going and be able to continue to provide value to the Illinois soybean growers. And the only way to do that is to keep entries coming into the program. Any other? Yes. All of this data is published on the University of Illinois Variety Testing website, and that is vt.cropsci.illinois.edu. And you can actually see going back about 15 years worth of data too.
Do you work with other crops too, or other researchers at the U of I?
We do, as part of some of this, Eliana out here, we do a lot of her off-site yield trials for her breeding program. And also some of the other professors at the university will put different studies in that we will plant and harvest in the variety testing locations with some, soybean cyst nematode trials have been in there, and some planting rate studies and just some of that kind of stuff. Nothing too intense yet, but we're open to other options.
Do you do any kind of ratings on the soybeans?
As I'm going through harvesting, I will give every plot a lodging score from 0 to 9. 0 meaning that I don't see where the bean plants are leaning over any at all, and 9 would mean that it's basically completely flat on the ground. Thankfully, I haven't seen very many that I had to give a 9. Also, beforehand, we will go in and we generally will take a height of the first rep of the variety trials, and we will also take a maturity date. So basically, we will note the date that each variety reaches 80% maturity. Because a 3.2 maturity from this company might not be the same as a 3.2 maturity from this company. So we're trying to say that what exactly the day that this bean made to 80% maturity. And that's published in the leaflet, but this the way that it comes out of our statistical software, it just correlates to a bunch of numbers on here that I couldn't translate out to be able to give you guys a honest figure. I wish I could have, but I also would have been up here for 4 hours probably having to go through some of this stuff. So, any other questions?
The question is, what were your populations that you run?
The population that we run is 148,000. We did do a population study with Giovanni here, where we went down to 100,000 and up to 250,000. And I believe he will be publishing that data sometime in the very near future. I know he was going through it just a week or so ago because he was asking me some questions about it.
Any other questions for Clay?
Do you take samples for protein and oil?
We don't actually take a physical sample for the protein and oil. The combine itself has an NIR machine on it, and that's what, through the generosity of Illinois Soybean Association, they helped have fund that, and it gives us that data as soon as it goes through the combine. So we don't have to actually take a sample, and it just cuts down on the workload and everything considerably.
And again, that's published
That's
on-
published
on
with,
the website.
That's published on the website along with, it was in the Agri-News back in November and December, and also there was a pamphlet that went out to anybody that was on the list, and if you would like to be on the list, you can also sign up for that on the website as well. And next year, we will mail out a hard copy of the results to you.
Did you see any disease pressure this year anywhere?
No.
Did you see any disease pressure?
Yeah, we did not see any disease pressure this year. Only one of the locations actually got a fungicide applied to it, and that was just because they were going to apply it to the rest of the field. And they were going to do it by air, and I didn't want to worry about drift getting onto part of the trial and not the rest of it, and fouling up the data that way. So I said, just consider that trial not there and just spray the whole field, because it's better to just treat the whole thing as opposed to worrying about part of it got it and part of it didn't, because it'd throw off our yield data.
How early are you planting?
As early as we can get out there. The target date for our corn trials is April the 15th. If we can get out there and be planting, we want to be planting. Now, this year, I would like to be throwing soybeans in at that same exact time. If I can have the seed ready to go and the field conditions are fit to plant on April the 15th, April 20th, in most cases, especially at Urbana where I'm close by, I would love to plant the variety trials. But some of the other trials that we have to intersperse in with the soybean trials, variety trials, dictates that we're going to go into May a little bit before we plant them because of not having seed treatment on some of the beans or whatever, because the way that we plant, everything is planted at one time. We make a pass through the field, and in one pass, there might be 4 trials that we're planting part of in that one pass. Yes, go ahead.
Another question about white mold. In our area, we had some white mold issues, and it seemed like it was predominantly in Group 4 beans, which most of the beans in our area are Group 3s, but do you know, in general, are the Group 4s not, they don't have as much genetic, history as far as, as far as concerned about white mold issues versus the Group 3s and so forth, as far as rating them against white mold resistance?
I'm going to be honest, I don't have a lot of experience working with white mold and knowing the genetic backgrounds of the soybeans for resistance to white mold, so I'm not sure that I could give you an honest answer on that.
That's a really good question, and I'm glad you brought it up because I just had the same discussion with some of my colleagues at U of I Plant Clinic, looking for different ways that they can work with variety testing. And so I used to work in the seed industry, and I can't speak for all seed companies, but a lot of times they only do ratings for the earlier maturities. And we have Dr. Belo, for example, saying plant your fullest maturity early. And so we have people pushing fuller maturities more than ever. And I remember getting complaints of a 3.9 because it didn't have a white mold rating. And you don't know until you get into that environment in order to rate it. And so that was one of the issues that we thought that we talked about. We haven't told Clay, and I'm not going to put him on the spot right now, but some opportunities to do some disease ratings and things like that where there's gaps within the industry. Not to say that there aren't some companies that do that, but there's the other one that we're trying to, I don't know if it's going to happen, but do some red crown knot ratings if we're able to get that going. But just any other ideas that you have like that, we're wanting to know if you think there's some gaps or issues where you've had on your farm. We can, maybe help work with either variety testing or other researchers on campus to see if they would be willing to do these types of activities, especially when we're having issues with some of the federal monies at this point in time. And so we're getting people looking for other opportunities for research as well.
Yes.
Have any other comments on that?
Yeah, there's been talk of doing stuff with red crown rot and involving Boris in that. He and his students would be going around probably to do the ratings on that. That would likely not be something that I would personally be doing the ratings on, but I would be obviously planting and caring for the locations and harvesting the trials and providing the yield data to Illinois Soybean Association and to whoever else was asking for it.
And
But-
again, to your point, we're at the mercy of seed companies, though. They
Yes.
have to submit their varieties in order to get them evaluated. So
Yes.
another thing to keep in mind.
Yes, and we need your help to keep entries coming in. Very much we need help from the farmers themselves are going to be the best voice to keep this program going. If you find it to be a value, you've got to tell your seed reps that you feel it is a value so that they can continue to enter seed varieties in the program. Because if they don't hear from you that you're finding it a value, they're not finding it a value.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much, Clay.